It's kind of an interesting story. Interdigital, the company I work for, we're a mobile company, there's arguments can be made about this, but we basically developed what many would consider to be the first digital mobile system in the world. 3G started up and we said, hey, they're going to go CDMA. We know they're going to go CDMA. So we got re-involved in the standards process. And by that time, I used to be the head of engineering, and I'd gotten out of the engineering, was over running sales and things of that sort, and marketing and that kind of stuff. And I almost retired at that time. And the chairman of the board came to me and says, what do you think about this standard stuff? And I said, well, it could be kind of cool, could be kind of interesting, and we might be able to make some plays here. So we kind of jumped back into it and on the 3G mobile side of it, and managed to be fairly successful in the course of that first year. So it kind of grew from that time, and I took over the standards area for the company. And I just kind of expanded it and grew it, and eventually ended up in the IEEE 802 arena, wireless LAN and all that.
Brian was a substantial contributor to activities and standards activities in IEEE 802, specifically in the 802.16 mobile broadband wireless access working group. Brian's contributions helped develop a substantial portion of that standard.
We were seeing how wireless LAN was going into cell phones, and we were doing cell phones. So, and we thought there was a lot of stuff that could be done, as an integration of the two. Hired a number of people and, convinced engineers that, hey, there's more to this than just, the slide rule calculator kind of stuff or simulations on computers. And, it just kind of blossomed from there.
He was leading a couple hundred people in the development of that major amendment to the standard. He was a chairman of the 802.16m Advanced Air Interface activity, which lasted for about 2 years.
The world wasn't yet ready for digital cellular, and we were sitting there doing digital radio, and one of the original early members of the company had spent a lot of time in South America, Central America, where people had no telephones. So he said, well, we could do this wireless local loop stuff, fixed wireless if you would. And that was kind of the company history. And about the same time, Dr. Roger Marks, who was the chair of 802.16, he kind of got that whole thing rolling, and the initial focus was fixed wireless. And Roger and I happened to meet at an investors conference in Denver, and he kind of talked me into coming over to 802, and I was given a paper on BCDMA, broadband CDMA as a fixed wireless alternative. And Roger kind of talked me into eventually coming over to 802.16.
He was involved in earlier activities in 802.16, and his unique combination of technical skill, leadership, and political savvy in bringing a couple hundred people together to consensus positions in such a highly competitive environment really speaks volumes to his capabilities as a technology leader.
For whatever reason, I was fairly good at managing to get people to agree. There's a lot of games that get played in standards, a lot of political games and things of that sort. And it is not a technical business. I mean, people think it's a technical business, but it really isn't. It's a political business. Because you're sitting there, at times we had 400 people in the meeting from 100 different competing companies, and you're trying to get them all to come together and say yes. And the important thing in getting standards is to get people to agree. Because if you don't get them to agree, it'll never happen.
It was a very large effort. There were over 200 people participating in the activity, dozens of companies, and it took several years to complete the activity. A very large, expansive set of changes to the 802.16 baseline interface to facilitate high-speed mobile wireless communications. That was a unique challenge that Brian was able to step up to and handle extremely well.
I liked doing it. It was great people. The people were fantastic. Even though, you know, some were from Huawei, some were from Motorola, some were from Intel, wherever it may be, and, you know, totally different agendas. Ultimately, they all work. I mean, the whole point of a standard is for everybody to work together to a common base. So you have a market. And if you don't get to the standard, you don't get to a market. And that's the common goal. And you just have to keep people's minds in that regard. Standards create a market. I mean, talk about Wi-Fi. I'll just use that because that's one everybody knows. Wi-Fi as 802.11 or as wireless LAN, around for a long time. Been around for, you know, a lot longer than most people think. But it wasn't until it became 802.11 and you sort of had a common industry building towards one thing that it began to really blossom.
Brian's unique set of skills enabled him to lead such a large, diverse group. He's technically knowledgeable, understands the fundamental drivers behind the technology from both a performance and business perspective, and was able to take that technical awareness and apply his leadership skills to also structure the work such that it got done in a timely and relatively efficient manner for 802.
I've enjoyed what I've been doing. I've hired great people. Typically, I've hired somebody who I saw as my replacement, you know, and made sure they were ready. So by doing that, it allowed me to look at the next level and get involved in the next level and, you know, move on. And I always had fun. Absolutely, always had fun.